Welcome to episode 10 of our Shared Screens House of the Dragon podcast. We got Boba Shinga, we got It's for Chance, we got Nevin's Island, we got Vegas Girl on Fire. We're talking about the season 1 finale, The Black Queen. Chance, what'd you think about it, man?
Yo, it delivered. Like, there's nothing else to say. I was really looking forward to this episode, knowing that it was going to mainly focus on the Targaryens, and I really enjoyed the ride.
Nick, do you think Rhaenyra is into choking?
That was an awkward ass scene. Maybe I don't know what she prefers in her quarters, but what an episode of television. These last two episodes are really 1A, 1B. Like they're the same sort of thing. It's all the response to what happened in episode 8, and with that knowledge, now that the season's over, if a friend asks me and they're like, I'm a Game of Thrones person, I finally getting around to Hot D, I'm going to let them know and be like, hey, episode 8 is the episode 9 of a normal Game of Thrones season, and then episode 9 and 10 are in episode 10. Like, that's normally what the vibe was. And so with that knowledge, now that we're sitting and we're looking at a full product, season 1 of House of Dragons, it's a really great fucking television show. We're not 2 minutes in. I'm so sorry, Chance. I'm sorry. I always lose it.
We're past the mark anyway. You're good, dude.
Yes,
we got him.
Yes. But what a good television show, man. What a great television show, man. It's so good. So good.
Vinny, what song would you sing to enchant a mysterious dragon beast?
I would probably do Careless Whisper to a dragon. I feel
Oh,
like that
shit.
Yeah.
Yo, that's a good pull.
Yeah.
What do you think of the episode?
Every week, I cannot wait for Sunday nights. There's a lot of good TV shows on right now that are like big in pop culture. But I mean, it's hands down, if I'm wanting to watch something right away, right as it comes out, it's House of Dragon. And this episode was a fantastic finale. Like, I thought everything delivered. It hit how it was supposed to. It was very emotional. It felt rewarding for all the characters that we've been with, and obviously devastating in a couple ways that I'm sure we'll get into as well.
Yeah. Vegas, if you had to gouge out one of your eyes to appease unruly cousin, which eye would you gouge out?
I wouldn't.
Or uncle? Uncle, I think.
Uncle, I think, yeah.
I'd rather just go out, the way that he did. I'm not gonna.
One swift munch.
Oh man. Yeah.
This is a good time to. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I gotta say, this episode absolutely shocked me. There was rarely things that I predicted or sat there and was like, yep, knew that was gonna happen. I was just shocked the entire time. So excellent finale.
Yeah, for me, I was saying before we recorded, like, I was waiting for the ball to drop, because the way they told episode 9 and then 10 as this like almost dual story of both factions, I knew we weren't going to get that traditional Thrones, especially season 1 Thrones, of that shocking gut punch twist in episode 9 and then seeing like the after effects with 10. But I was still expecting something to like hit me. I was like, what is going to happen? Because I thought, obviously, I was like, some of the kids on both sides are going to die. But like, I didn't expect that until like next season. And so the way it happened at the end, like, really, really shocked me. But I got to shout out Emma Darcy. Like, she was incredible this episode, just like Olivia Cook was last week. Like the physical acting, especially when like she heard the news at the end about her son. Like,
yeah,
dude, unreal. Like, without even seeing her face until the end, but like, just incredible acting all around. I can't wait to see, what awards everybody may get. But yeah, now we got to go ahead.
When Rhaenyra is looking at Daemon, when Daemon's walking towards her like very slowly, and she knows something's wrong before like she finds out what is wrong, that is like the best shot in the episode. Like, there's so many, there's a lot of good shots in this episode, but that was like totally stand out. So good.
I would say
there were like
the close second is when she turns around, because that look on her face is just priceless. Like, they did an amazing job acting out the scene.
If only they pushed all the way in. They didn't cut it all.
Just onto her eyes.
Yeah.
I feel like they bookended her badassness from like the beginning where she gave birth and was just like, all right, like, now I gotta toughen up and be the queen, to the end where, the shocking thing happened, and she was just like, now I gotta toughen up and be queen.
There's a large difference between grief that she's had beforehand and then the grief she suffers at the end of this episode, and that is that like I think about times in my life where all of a sudden like all bets are off, and spoilers for Captain America Civil War, which is a ridiculous thing. The moment in that movie where he says, "But you killed my mom," and then you just like it's go time. The same emotion. It's my favorite Marvel movie, hands down, but with a bullet. And the same emotion of the second I knew Daemon was going to walk in and say, "Hey, we just lost your son," I'm like, "Oh, all bets are off. It's fucking. It's going to be a slugfest after this." And God, it's just so good. Just that entire sequence is the definition of show not tell. That we didn't have to hear the words be said. We just were able to feel the emotions that were just so pungent at the end of that episode. And talk about just getting fired up for season 2. It is what I know we're starting with the very end of this episode, all chiming in on this, but it's so good. And when we end up talking about it at the end of this podcast again a little bit, I assume the sentiment will be the same. It's one of the best shots in the show. It's one of the best shots of the episode, and man, I was just so enthralled with the ending of this episode, because now I'm like, all right, all bets are off. Talk about just like if you want to go and like stab someone in the back hard, do exactly what happened at the end of the episode, because now it's just gloves off, greens versus blacks. Let's get it.
Bro, I got some things to say about that scene, so let's get fucking rolling, son. Let's talk about this bitch.
I just gotta say, because Vinny touched on it a little bit. There were like 3 or 4 shots of Rhaenyra looking badass at the painted table, like just all the great cinematography shots of her with like the council around her. But let's dive into the episode. So, like always, we're just gonna go from start to finish, touch on a couple plot points, and then we're all just gonna chime in wherever and however we want, and just let the conversation flow naturally. So yeah, we start with the beginning of Rhaenys relaying the news that King Aegon II has been crowned at King's Landing. We go through the whole spiel of they have all the legitimacy, you know, the sword, the crown, everything like that, the septon. Meanwhile, while Daemon is planning to make some moves, Rhaenyra is giving birth. They in the behind the scenes, they talked about how like one of the things she regretted the most was like being a mother and like dealing with that in terms of like just hindering her life, and like literally like she's being usurped, and then she has to deal with like giving birth to a child, and then it turns out to be stillborn. Yeah, so Daemon's planning the next move in terms of sending out ravens and what have you to different allies. We get this interesting scene where Daemon mentors Jacaerys because Rhaenyra's like, hey, like you're like next in line now that things are about to go down, so like get ready, dude. And Daemon's like, here, let me tell you how we talk down to the lower folk here.
Real quick, I want to double back on just Rhaenyra while she is giving birth, and it's just visceral as all get out. I watched it with a couple friends.
Yeah,
I turned away. I'm not someone that can do. I can do blood, but like gore. I've seen the Miracle Life movie in middle school. I don't need to see that again. Like that was just gruesome as all hell. But the reason I bring this up is that was happening, and I like how like Daemon is just like, bet we're going. Like we are now just in this stone cold. It is now time to go to war. For a couple reasons. One, he jumps to the conclusion that I think many people would in that situation, being like, they just killed my brother, and so gloves are off. We're gonna have our moment. We're gonna go. And then 2, he's like, they also just screwed over my wife, and so now it's this whole scene of pure like violence without saying it. It's just pure, all right, it's go time. I feel like there was a moment of him just being so shut off, and the acting is so well done by Matt that like he never shows a scent of emotion until he gets that scene with Rhaenyra later on, where it's just the two of them. It is just pure fire, and the acting, it goes and carries it so well throughout the entire episode up until that moment. And the acting's amazing there. I'm not saying the acting falls off or anything, but just the way he carries himself, it is a side of Daemon that like we around episode 6 didn't think we get to see again with the way the story was being told of him just giving up, but now he's fully in the game, he's fully engaged, and Matt Smith just balls out acting wise.
I want to
sorry, Chance, hop in.
To piggyback off of that, just like seeing him in his element and almost like he had been preparing for this day for like a long fucking time. He had like exactly what to do, exactly planned. Like this is his side of like the politic game where like she can talk and everything. And I do want to bring up before just like real quick, how quickly he turns on a dime when she says stop. Just like the amount of like, he is the perfect support character for Rhaenyra. He just like, he is her guy and he is ready to do whatever it takes to support his wife, the queen.
I think to an extent, as we see later.
That scene fucking.
I wanted to bring up the interesting point of we see Daemon being married to different people over the course of the season. 1 to Rhea, 2 to Laena, and then 3 to Rhaenyra. And I feel like over each marriage, like he's more in love with that person, right? Like he wasn't really care about Rhea. So. He kind of cared about Laena, and then he really cares about Rhaenyra. But even throughout each marriage, and definitely with Rhea because they didn't have any kids, but like he is just not about that like birthing life, like being like he just refuses to be a part of that. I just think that's an interesting like character trait. There's something about like a fetus that is just it's uncomfortable, man. Like if y'all played Witcher 3, the Bloody Baron quest, like
oh my god,
that is like, dude, it's uncomfortable, bro. Yeah. But it really gets at you, man.
They did a really good job with it, though. It was real.
Yeah,
it felt real.
This one was way more disturbing than The Witcher. I'm gonna be real.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure.
I'd say this scene was more disturbing than the first scene of her mother being cut open.
Which
really
just the gruesome.
Yeah,
like you kind of see everything. It was very.
I thought
very raw.
I thought her mom scene was more gruesome, but this one I feel like hit me harder. Of like, she refuses their help. She is just like her power, and like, I don't know. I really had like a strong sense of like just Rhaenyra's presence during those scenes and how she was controlling it.
She's a badass.
Yeah.
I think that comes off of the back though of like this is a character compared to that first episode where we get only a couple scenes with the queen. And now that we know this character, we care about them and we know what just happened, which was they said in the after episode really eloquently of she's been dreaming this moment forever. Like not dreaming in the sense of like she's trying to pursue for it to happen, but dreaming there will be a moment where Viserys is dead. It's your turn to rule. It is your turn to go. And she gets told, all right, Viserys is dead. Your crown is being taken away. And now your child is coming early. Like, and just everything is ruined. And you see her just be like, F all this. Like, this just sucks. This really just sucks. I don't want anyone's help. I don't want to deal with people. And her husband is shut off. He's now ready to go to war. And so the way that it is acted out, it is visceral, it is disgusting, but it's also sort of as messy as the moment that she is in. And I think that once again, the writers are just brilliant with the show not tell. And they showed it was disgusting, it was visceral, but it was the moment, and it makes sense that moment.
I know we don't want to drag this topic on too long, but to me, it felt like because all of those things were crashing down on her, that the fact that she went into an early birth was because of all the stress. And it was almost like, I know this is not like a decision that she made, but it was almost like, okay, well, let me get rid of this baby real quick so that I can get to doing what I need to do. I know that's not what she was thinking. It's like she was really devastated when it happened, but it was almost like she needed to not be pregnant to deal with
a body's
everything that was going on,
flight or flight instinct, just like
exactly
ejecting.
Like the stress of everything happening, ejected the baby.
And she says, "Get it out of there," or something along those lines of like, "This thing needs to go now." And you could almost tell with once again the amount of just pure amazingness of the actress. Just like she's saying, "I rather get this out now and continue on than have another kid." Almost, and it doesn't mean that it lessens the blow of the kid. It's just that all this shit sandwich that she's
Yeah.
dealing with is I completely agree with you, Vegas.
Yeah. So we get this interesting parallel again with episode 1 when Viserys has to bury Emma and Balon. Balor? Balon? And it's, kind of similar cinematography shots, obviously burying a child, things like that. And then in this burial scene too, we get Rhaenyra is officially coronated amongst the Black Council, and then the Queen's Guard, I guess, since she's a queen and not a king. Eric with an E stole the crown back in King's Landing and gave it to Rhaenyra. So Rhaenyra has Viserys' crown, and then Aegon II has Aegon the Conqueror's original crown. So just to keep track.
I love the parallel moment of the last time we see Viserys' crown, we see it fall off his head. Who picks it up? Daemon puts it on the rightful king. And in this moment, the crown gets handed off from Eric number 2, basically, and goes to who? Daemon. And Daemon is the one that coronates her. Daemon is the one that I feel like one way or another holds the most like family ties amongst this entire situation. And him being the through line that is going to go and hopefully push them back on the Iron Throne, it is beautiful, and it makes I enjoy episode 8 even more because of that moment and because of that through line. I just want to tag it there.
To think that moment wasn't even scripted. That there's interviews after that when the crown falls off, that was not scripted.
Yeah.
So that's crazy that Matt Smith like picked it up and then brought it back onto Viserys' head. Which is pretty crazy. So good.
Yeah, that was probably the most powerful scene of the season for me. If I had to pick one.
We're kind of getting into the second half of this episode where we go from like a lot of processional type stuff into like drawing a line of like where do you stand on the oath. And that is the most interesting portion of this episode to me, is let's talk with people that had previously taken the oath that Rhaenyra is going to be queen, and are they sticking by this, or are they now promising their alliance to Aegon, right? And this is like, I love this. I love this scene where Daemon is asking the old kings, or the what are they? The Kingsguard, the 2 Kingsguard people, where he's giving it an option. He's like, you
either die, either die, or
But he does say he says, if you want to call it here, and like there's certain nights we've seen through the Game of Thrones mythos be like, I care more about honor than anything else. And so I kind of enjoy it. I kind of respect it. And obviously he's putting the fear of God into him by having the dragon over his shoulder. But like, it makes sense. And then he says, if you're allowed to die honorably here, like you're good because you've broken oath, basically you deserve to die if you're not going to recommit. But he says, if you go and turn back now, I'm going to make it as painful and gruesome as possible. And obviously that's Daemon being Daemon and doing the Daemon thing, but it's so well acted, and Matt Smith is so good. And Vinny, you nailed it. This section, it is the most interesting section of this episode for me. And this is where it really picks up and goes into like overdrive, because we get the first bit of just like, I am never checking my phone during a Game of Thrones episode. I was on silent. I have it put away. During the first 20 minutes, as much as I was gripped, I was like, what are we going to end with? How is this episode really going to end? Because we are getting a lot of the Rhaenyra side. We're getting a lot, like, so much has happened in the first 10 minutes. And like, when it just comes to bullet point stuff, but then we get these awesome Game of Thrones moments of, all right, let's actually get into the politics. Let's actually get into the discussion of this. Let's actually feel the fallout. And it's brilliant. It's so good. So I completely fall in line with you, Vinny.
Do we think, real quick, the Kingsguard, the younger guy definitely seemed like he was on board. The older dude seemed like he needed a little bit of talking into. I leave it there. I thought that was funny that the one dude who like answered was like, is there a question? And then the other guy just didn't say shit the entire time.
Well, we already have the lead of the Kingsguard in the previous episode, Leave Alicent. Remember, he takes his like cloth thing off and lays it on the table. He's like, I'm only taking what he said. Some
He's
line.
like when you get
There's
a king,
no
let
ruler
me-
here.
Yeah,
Yeah,
when
And
you get a
I
king,
only
let me
serve
know.
one ruler.
Right.
Mm.
I think that could be a
Tell
very
me when you
interesting.
find out who's running this
Yeah.
place.
That's going to be a very interesting like plot line. I'm sure that will build into something bigger. And even to what you're saying, Chance, of the two guys that we saw in this episode, where one of them was just like, "Yep, all right, that's fine," and the other one was a little more hesitant. I think we could see that a lot with a lot of the members.
On both sides, last week and this week, yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's important too to keep count of the Kingsguard members because there's 7 total, right? There are only gonna be 7. One said I'm out. He resigned, and then I think 4 were at the Red Keep, and then 2 are with.
Well, if there's
Rhaenyra.
7, is the leader the 7th? So there's 3 and 3 because they have Eric.
Yeah, so it's 3 and 3 now. Yeah.
Which is that's like even a more interesting wrinkle is that the Kingsguard is even split down the center on who they're backing. Do we still think that the other head of the Kingsguard, the prior head, is gonna come to Rhaenyra, or do you think he's just outie 5,000?
I think it's Rhaenyra. I think that like it's he's waiting to re-link it up. Like
the way that he walked out, because they were saying that whole meeting that he walked out of was like, Aegon is the king. They're basically saying it, and he was like, you know what, you guys don't seem sure.
And he was there
He's
when
definitely going to Rhaenyra.
When Rhaenyra gave Sir Kristen Cole the chance, like when she got a pick and she picked him, he was like the one that took her there. So it's just thinking back at that episode, at that scene, it's probably even more ironic for him of like, you're such a little fucking shit, and now you're like holding your sword out at me. Anyway, I digest.
Yeah. Also, the bald dude who got hung, his name was Lord Caswell. So rest in peace to him. He
ripped to the
couldn't come up
fallen.
with an alibi.
Yeah.
We were just laughing about it like last week, Vinny. Like, Otto's like, "Hey, like, where were you going?" And he didn't say anything.
He had like at least 30 minutes of getting drug around.
Oh my gosh, dude.
Come up with a good excuse before you get in there, bro.
Like you couldn't think of something like I'm going out to get bread. Like he could be going out into the city. He could be like, I'm going to like go to
a brothel.
Like,
leave me alone. I have my deviancies.
like
my favorite outhouse is right
anything.
outside the castle.
Yeah.
Which they did see him be late to Neil and everything, so I guess that they have some reason. But like, come on, dude. I know that that's the last episode, but come on.
While we're on the topic of last episode, what are y'all's thoughts on Larys being a feet guy?
Oh my god, that was the best part of the episode. I was like, what a random thing that they had to put in here, and it kind of like, I was like, what is he taking for payment? Because he's just like, I'm gonna do shit for whatever, and I'm like, oh,
yeah,
okay,
just a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Actually,
I'm not trying to dunk on what anybody has in the comments, how they feel about foot
no king shaming here, no king shaming.
But if like, it was one of those moments where I'm like, this dude is loyal to her almost like, and then it gets proven so in a sexual way. Like there is like a moment of just like, you have my heart almost through this whole deal. And apparently he's a toes guy, and man, oh man, that was something. What we got?
I'm sure that not just the feet thing, does it for him, but the actual idea of power probably does it for him too. Like having
he doesn't have just any.
No, he 100% has a foot fetish, but it's like extra because it's the queen. I just did a search for everybody. You don't have to go looking. Queen Allison doesn't have a wiki feet yet. One of you keen-eyed listeners out there, go make that happen for us.
Damn. Which, to touch on one more thing, like back in episode 6, like 10 whatever years before, she like takes her shoes off and stuff, but they don't really like focus on that. So it's been going on for a while.
Yeah.
But let's go back to the finale here. Daemon announces his initial plan in terms of, hey, we have some allies, I think here. We need to get these allies. They're assessing size for the blacks, or they're setting all the different markers for the different factions. But Big point. Yeah, fantastic scene. Awesome to light the fire under the table.
Yo,
Too.
so fucking hype.
Yep,
Sick.
it's
So
awesome.
sick.
So sick. But Rhaenyra is reluctant to start a war. Now, we'll get into it a little bit later, but I want to bring it up now. What do you guys think about her being so even-keeled when she's literally being usurped?
I want to bring up real quick that Daemon has been doing dragon math for a minute. He has been adding up what
Yeah,
dragons are
yes.
going where for a while.
13-4, bro.
Yeah, dude,
13
he's
to
like
4.
he's feeling pretty confident. I really like that as a character turn, where you have Allison kind of losing control, where she's always been the one with control, and now you have Rhaenyra in control when typically she would be the one that's deemed out of control, right? And so I think it's interesting how they kind of like mirror each other at any given moment. I just really like. Go ahead.
The best part, and this is going back to the thing of episode 8 is the episode 9 of what you traditionally expect, but we are getting the mirror images of how these two girls that like we've seen be badass, we've seen like be politically savvy, we've seen now for 8 episodes be brilliantly acted, brilliantly well thought out, and to go and see in the moment of fretting, you see Alicent screaming and crying and figuring out, and when Aegon runs away, she's losing her mind and everything, and then you have Rhaenyra here just being steady, and it is, as you were saying, Chance, just
Through heavy trauma.
She has a fucking
Just-
miscarriage and doesn't lose an ounce of composure. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Vegas.
No, dude,
Yeah.
you're right. She doesn't
That's
lose
exactly
a step,
it.
and it's brilliant. Yeah.
I wanted to bring up too from last episode that amazing line from Rhaenys about how Alicent is still like stuck within like the patriarchy, and like all you want to do is construct this like beautiful window inside your prison. And then I think was it episode 3 or 4 when she's like staring out the window, and the window sill is like a giant like cast iron like almost like prison cell like guard. Like I thought that might be my favorite line of the season. Because it just perfectly sums up that entire faction and Alicent's, catalyst for making her decisions. But yeah, so we then connect to Otto arriving at Dragonstone with a host of knights, and he brings the terms to Rhaenyra. He's like, "Hey, like you basically get to keep everything you already have here. You get Dragonstone. We're still going to allow you to keep, your heirs to take over Driftmark." And then you just got to bend the knee, and we'll all go home happy. Awesome parallels to episode 2 again when Otto confronts Daemon. Almost like same shots. Rhaenyra flies her dragon again, lands. So I thought that was awesome. But we were talking about Emma Darcy's body acting. Dude, Matt Smith's stink face throughout this entire episode, dude. He is just like snarling at Otto, like
shooting daggers, bro, with those eyeballs.
He was gonna kill him.
Yeah.
He was definitely gonna
dude,
kill him.
he whips out a sword like immediately, dude.
Yeah.
Immediately.
Save him for me, y'all.
Hold me back. Don't hold me back.
I like the callback in this scene to the previous time that we had an interaction with Daemon on this bridge where Rhaenyra came to settle down Rhaemond, and she did the same thing again, but in a very different context where she was coming to settle him down and to turn him away from the path. She still kind of was, but it was more of like, no, like we are ready to like go against you, where she was kind of like helping out Otto last time.
Yeah, because in episode 2, she's like, "Hey, Daemon, kill me right here, end it, and it's over." And then this time, she reins him in. Were you gonna say, Vinny?
When she flies in on that dragon, that is like such a badass moment. Are you kidding? Like
It was
she
another
comes
mirror.
she
moment.
lands right there, totally, and it's like she's showing up. She's telling Otto, like, I am not here to mess around, like, at all. And it was awesome. It was so cool.
Well, and like how much like he has no power there. He's used to like wielding all of the power behind the scenes, and now he's in the light and he can't get away from her.
Absolutely.
I think that Otto, and it's once again like they're supposed to, when you're doing terms and such, it's parlay, we're chill, but like he's got to expect to die there, right? Like you're rolling into there like being like, I got a couple men behind me, but we know We
No,
know they
I
got
don't think
dragons.
I don't think he thought
I
he was gonna
think
die. I thought he was
he-
untouchable when he went up there, and he was surprised.
Mhm.
He looked less scared here because I think in last episode he got the fear of God put in him when Rhaenys and Meleys like freaking like almost ate him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he had it already done in episode 2, so he's had a couple dragon faces, up in his grill. So I think he's more used to it at this point, and he knows he's untouchable because he knows if he ever got harmed or killed or whatever, like
That's
it
Act
would
War.
it'd be go time.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's game over.
Which-
literally
No.
the hand of the king at that point. Still,
Yeah.
He
When
took
she
his hand though.
when she threw that thing over the side, I was like, "Fuck yeah, Rhaenyra, get him."
Yeah.
she calls him out on it, like because like
You
everybody
don't deserve this
knows.
shit.
Everybody knows like what's going on. It's just the Greens are kind of pretending to keep their heads under the table.
How proud they are, like when he hangs his hat on like all of the symbolism of Aegon being king, not the fact that like he actually has the right to it and that he was named successor, but just the idea that the people would follow of him being king. I thought that it's so interesting how the Hightowers put so much on that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we talked about it a little bit last week where they, Alicent, over the years totally kind of redid the fashion of the Red Keep and made it more Faith of the 70 and less Targaryen-y with like some of the murals and stuff like that. But when it came time for Aegon to be crowned, they're all about that dragon life.
Mhm.
Yeah, Otto brings up hey, we got the sword, we got the crown. Tens of thousands of people saw it. So they saw it all play out. They think
He was being
legit.
so fucking petty in that moment,
Oh,
like
yeah.
just so petty.
Well, he's playing his cards. Like he knows what the hand he has to play at this point. He knows what he has behind him. And so when you're going to go and bring terms, I believe like he's showing as much power as his hand, not himself being the hand, but like his actual like power is in the show thus far. And like she considers it. Like she takes a moment and she's like, I promised peace. Like this is my job. And so at least he didn't come in with like a bogus offer. And I mean, still though, we don't have to consider this for where this episode ends. But like eventually the Hightowers would have them all on stakes, right? Even with those being the terms of like,
Oh, yeah.
we'll be all
Well,
buddy.
It was implied earlier that they would be dead.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And with the like specifically the point of Lucerys being the heir of Driftmark, like literally a few months ago they were like, hey, he shouldn't be the heir to Driftmark. So why do you think they would uphold it down the line when they have even more consolidated power?
exactly.
What did you guys think about Otto bringing that little piece of paper from, I think it was like a Faith of the Seven book or something that Rhaenyra tore from not Alicent's book, but they just were reading it in the Godswood like 20 years ago or whatever. Did that stir any emotional connection to you guys with Rhaenyra and Alicent?
I mean, when I think of Rhaenyra and Alicent's last kind of conversation together, in which Alicent says some very like honest words and almost like forgiving words to
Mhm.
Rhaenyra, and Rhaenyra hesitantly kind of accepts that and says some words back, and they share like a moment of like a strong moment to where I'm like, okay, like obviously I know where this show's going, it's not gonna last, but in the moment, damn, it feels good that they could potentially have a nice little friendship again. But her sending the page of the book felt also honest, but at the same time like a threat. I don't know, like it was able to do both those things just by showing her the page. I thought it was like, I don't know, it makes you think of like, what is Alicent trying to say with this?
For me, I'm gonna be real with you guys. I've watched episode 8 of this show 3 times since the premiere. 3 times since the premiere, so 4 times. It is the early candidate for my favorite episode of television for this entire year. And with that, the last time that these two talked was a good discussion. Was not disgusting, at least. Was friendly. Was a acknowledgement of their past friendship. At least it showed that there was still something there. And in this moment, I think, and Alicent even says it, Otto's like, yeah, all these guys need to die. But like, Alicent isn't ready to just like start destroying them. She knows what needs to be done, but she's not trying to go and be aggressive in this situation. And so I think I took this as a moment of, hey, we're not good. Like things are not good right now. This is a shit situation. But Alicent, in her mind, does have a little bit of credence because of Viserys' last words. She said what she heard was, "My son should be king." It's what she wanted to hear, obviously, but like,
which, by the way, we talked about last week. That is a show change. Viserys is utter like that miscommunication at the end.
Yeah,
So,
but as the show has it, it is a way of, hey, like this is what I believe in. This is what we're doing, and get on, or you're gonna get ran over. Like get on the train, or you're gonna get ran over. And it's kind of brutal, but I took it as a moment of like just looking at the last time these two like had any communication was friendly. That this was a showing once again of friendliness, even though it was the situation that they were in, it obviously was not a friendly situation.
To me, I feel like they've lived enough life not friends that they're more not friends. And that was more of a show of like, we're on the same page, which I do believe that they're both on the same page. They both want peace, but Alicent believes that the only way to get peace is for her son to be king.
Yeah.
Because the realm is not going to accept Rhaenyra. And Rhaenyra thinks that she just should be queen and will carry on her father's wishes for, a happy, healthy kingdom. And they both want the same thing. They both want peace. I don't think they want to kill each other. And I think that paper was just more of a like, hey, remember, we've always been on the same page. Here's the page. But it's not going to be, they're not going to agree on how they're going to get that.
Yeah, I would have to look at the page again. I think it was the page of the mother from the 7, and they're both obviously mothers, and so that's been a big defining part of their life, especially Alicent's life. And we talked about it last week a little bit too, but like Alicent in the entirety of last episode is like, oh man, like I don't want to do this, but she's kind of like allowing herself to be carried through like the current of like this like river of like Otto and the rest of that council, the Green Council, like making the moves, and she's like, I don't want to do this, but oh well, like. So yeah, very very interesting character. But we'll go into the next plot point here. So after the Black Council meeting, Daemon and Rhaenyra clash. Daemon is more pragmatic in terms of making moves to shore up their side of this impending war, while Rhaenyra strives for peace and still has that little nugget of the prophecy in the back of her mind. And what shocked me the most, not really, but it did shock me, was when she told the prophecy to Daemon, and he was like, I don't give a hoot, dude.
Yeah.
Like, that doesn't mean anything to me. Like, we got to deal with this, like, right here and now. What did you guys think about this conversation, this conflict between Rhaenyra and Daemon?
I thought it was.
I think it's a testament of the difference in the relationships between Daemon and the king and Rhaenyra and the king, and she just had a different relationship, and he loved his brother and he wants revenge, and she loved her father and she wants to carry out his wishes.
Yep, and I think that's just their characterization through this show thus far, where like we are the emotions are at an all-time high, and finally we get to see not just fully in action Daemon this episode. We get a moment of sincerity, even though it's aggressive sincerity. It is him putting out all his cards and saying, hey, they just screwed us over. We are going to war, Sword Deal. I am ready to go to war. This is how I am taking this entire situation. And she is saying, as Vegas said very eloquently, this wasn't my father's wishes. My father's wishes was the United Kingdom, and I'm trying to take that to heart. So not my first decision as queen goes against what my father would have done, who put me in power in the first place. And it's an intense scene, but it is a really well acted scene, and it allows, I feel like, for the rest of the episode to really show where these two characters are going to be entering season 2.
Yeah. Anybody else?
I was way more into it until he started choking her. I'm just gonna leave it at that.
Yeah,
That made me feel uncomfortable with the situation, even though that's clearly a dynamic that they
It
kind
took
of
away,
have.
yeah, it took away their like they seemed like they were so much of like a dynamic duo, and then it was like, oh, well,
Yeah.
men will still be men in this day and age. He's showing his power.
I want to talk about Daemon because we'll touch on it a little bit upcoming, but like how I brought up earlier, like he wasn't even at that. Like I don't know about all of their other kids' births, but what we've seen in the show is he just does not show up for any of those like big moments in like his.
Well,
like,
he was there for his daughter's birth, the last birth and decision making
for Lena.
Yeah.
But he's not like at her bedside though. That's what I'm kind of getting at. He's not at her bedside, and he is like, yeah. Again, baby steps. He's like kind of working towards like being less crappy in that regard. But he is just such an interesting like stack of contradictions where like he is so into the Targaryenness. He is so into like the history and the legacy of this family in terms of learning the language, and he's like singing the song to that one dragon. But then when Rhaenyra's like, "Hey, I have this prophecy from Viserys," he's like, "Oh, that's like a bunch of bull crap. Like, I don't care about that." Like, it's just so interesting that like on one hand he leans so heavily into that part of his life, and then on other hands he totally rejects it.
But I think that the way he acts there is in line with what you just said. Of he's all about the Targaryens. That's all cool with him.
He's fact over fiction.
Yeah, but he wants to go and he's like, they just killed my brother. That holds more weight than the like this idea, this
dragons.
This
these are all
dream.
facts.
Yeah, like like
prophecy.
Exactly. Whatever.
And he brings up the line about the dragons. What did he say again? Does anybody remember verbatim? Like,
and so what scene are we talking about? The
scene between Daemon and Rhaenyra. He says something about how like men, like we didn't win because of what the prophecy or whatever. We won because of dragons.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about how that factors into what happened at the end of the episode, tying into a pretty cool quote from Viserys from the first episode. But we'll move on to the next plot point. So it turns out Corlys lived. He didn't die from that mysterious fever, whatever wound he suffered at the Stepstones. He wakes up in Dragonstone, so he must have just been like milk of the poppy on the ship ride home. Like he didn't know where he was.
Riding out that fever in style, bro. Just high as fuck.
Yeah.
Just get that man a nice little a drinky drink and let him fall asleep, and he'll be a-okay. And he looked exactly like you'd expect someone that just had a fever, bro. He looked like absolute dog water, but it was definitely as Brett know, that was me. That was me yesterday, Brett. After a late night of partying on Friday, just miserable in my bed, tucked under the sheets.
Could have used some milk of the poppy.
It could be some milk of the poppy. Yeah, absolutely. IK Tylenol.
Yeah.
Nowadays. Yeah.
That's the legal term for it.
Yeah.
So yeah, Corlys awakens and he finally realizes that his ambition, the price is a little too high. He's like,
brother's dead.
My brother's dead. My children are dead. And we're brewing up for a war. And he initially in this moment is like, yeah, like we're just gonna go back to high tide and chill out and soak up some rays, and which is interesting because Rhaenys was kind of towing the line of like what to do, on her end, her personal end.
Well, I think that's pretty powerful too. When Rhaenys tells the sea snake, like, you left me at a time when I needed you, and he kind of responds like, I didn't know what to do. I had nothing left. And from her perspective, is like, me, like you have me left kind of thing. And she feels totally abandoned by him. So he comes back and kind of like agrees with everything that she's telling him, even though like when he left, his idea was that oh, Rhaenyra killed my son and blah 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 and blah
Yeah.
blah. And they both did believe that, but Rhaenys kind of
Reeled him in.
Yeah, she reeled him in, but she's realizing that Rhaenyra is the only hope now. Like she's the only option. Without her, there might not be a next chapter for her side of the Valerians.
Let me tell you something about Rhaenys. This whole episode, she's been in almost every damn scene, just kind of looking, and I'm like, what is she doing? And I feel like it was just very powerful. And then they go to that scene, and Corlys is just like strong with his convictions, and she's like, no, dude, we don't have any other choice.
Right.
If we go back home and just chill, we're gonna die. Your granddaughters, they're gonna die. And he's like, oh, okay. Yeah, you're right.
I had a
Go
really
ahead.
hard time with the decision that she made at the end of the last episode. I'm not gonna lie. Over this last week, that's probably like my biggest flaw with the show, is putting her in that position and not letting her pull the trigger, just based off of the fact that her granddaughters are betrothed to the enemy of these people's like sons, right? So like based off of that, you want your family to live. Having this like episode where she's clearly ping-ponging back and forth, doesn't know what team she's going to join, and then has that conversation after she sees Rhaenyra as a leader, I thought now justifies it way better than the end of the episode interview bullshit. When they said that was a heroic moment and she killed like 300 fucking citizens coming out of the ground, that's not a heroic moment.
Yeah.
I'm talking to you, writers. That's not heroic.
Rhaenys in this scene and the scene after is my MVP of this episode. Simply put, what like so well acted, and Chance, you nailed it. That's my biggest issue with the show too, is the last moment of that episode. And I think that like the through line of her story through 9 and through 10 is probably my favorite part of the through line that happens, except for that character decision that, yes, I totally disagree with everything you just said. But to go back into this scene, so well acted, but most importantly, it's like a lot of this show is, hey, these girls are extremely smart and they are smarter than these dudes. They just are. These dudes are headstrong. They are just going in circles with their own bullshit. And a moment where she finally, and like, once again, the acting is like insane here, because I'm like sitting and I shed a tear in this moment where I was like, holy fuck, dude, I feel so bad for you. You lost everything, and then you had your husband abandon you, and like, thank God he pulled his head out of his butt and went along with her, even at like, because at first he's once again headstrong in his own bullshit when he doesn't realize and see the truth behind what the situation they're actually in now, what they have to do, what's best for their family, what's best for themselves. And it is so well acted. And the best part is Corlys in the next scene. And I'm just going straight into it, Brett. But in the next scene has this amazing grand speech of why he will be backing her. And Vegas said it. And then what does the camera do? It shows Rhaenyra, and then right behind her shows Rhaenys as Corlys looks at Rhaenys to be like, hey, I'm with you on this. And it's totally just a moment of, this is all of her doing, and Rhaenys is the badass, and Rhaenys is the one that actually is pushing this through. And it's like the moment in episode 3, I believe, where Rhaenys is talking to Rhaenyra about how, hey, they're going to try to take this away from you. Like, it's not going to be the case. I thought the same thing. I've been down this road. It is so awesome to see both of these women kick so much ass in this moment, because they're both the ones pulling the strings while the boys want to go to war.
Was an episode for women just in general. Like when Rhaenyra comes in the room the first time, and Daemon's daughter, I can't, sorry, the relationships, I can't always.
Mela?
Yeah, brings her the drink, and she's like, girl, come to the table with me.
And then
like,
she
oh,
signals
all
the
girls,
other
get your
one.
asses over
You
here.
need to see what's
Yeah.
happening. This is important for you to know.
That's
Yeah.
cool.
All the girls get in here.
I wanted to bring up
We're
real
doing
quick
this.
how Rhaenys took what Alicent said in that moment where she knew she was being a hypocrite about like what she was saying, and it was about like, we are the person that like turns the head of the king, right? Like, and she took that and used it against her. And
Oh,
like I
absolutely.
love that kind of like full circle of like, yo, you said I should be queen, but you're also saying that I like should be ruling from the shadows behind my king. All right, bitch. Well, I'm gonna tell him to fuck you. Like that's, I really liked that kind of little, I don't know,
yeah.
circle back.
Yeah, like for me with Rhaenys, it was like a Venn diagram of kind of like what Vinny said, where like she realized her hands were tied with Rhaenyra in terms of like her grandchildren are like Daemon's kids, and so they're also betrothed to Rhaenyra's kids, and like where she goes is where Driftmark goes. So no matter what her and Corlys do individually, like her hands are kind of tied to her cause, Rhaenyra's cause, and she like Vinny said, she sees Rhaenyra like that she has a good head on her shoulders, where she doesn't really have any one-on-one interaction with Aegon, but his reputation precedes him obviously, and she literally witnessed like the coup taking place last episode, so she's like,
And
okay.
she locked her in her room, like real
Yeah,
quick.
Rhaenyra didn't do that.
Yeah, like just a quick little like,
oh, you're
F
here?
you, dude. Like, relax, okay? We can talk about this. You don't need to go straight to holding me captive. Like, I would also be like, screw you. Even if even if it was an hour in my room, I'd be like, nah, dude, I'm totally gonna use my dragon and kill citizens for no reason. But that's besides the point. Let's get on the next one.
But yeah. So Corlys pledges the Driftmark fleet to Rhaenyra. So for the Team Greens, they have the Lannister fleet, but for Team Black, they have the Valerian fleet, and so it's probably a slight edge to the Valerians just because they have more experience, they have a bigger fleet, all that. So slight edge up for Team Black. We're keeping track of the score here.
I feel like it's more than a slight hands up because like they're blocking the trade route, so they can be
they
like
basically said we have.
they can be like matching
the
each other in
routes.
strength, but while the back end of the Valyrian fleet is holding off and like cordoning off their supplies, I do feel like that's going to give them they have more utilization out of their fleet, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
For sure. Yeah, their fleet is more centrally located, obviously, with the narrow sea. So
And they have
are on the west.
fucking Hawaii being Dragonstone right in the center there that they can just kind of fuck with everybody.
Right. I kind of meant in the sense of like, I feel like, and I don't actually know because they didn't get to the specifics, but I feel like the Greens have probably more like land alliances. So they probably have more control.
Yeah.
They got Storm's End, as we'll see later. They might get River Run. They have the West with the High Towers and the Tyrells and the Lannisters. So so it's not looking good on that front. But obviously the Valyrian fleet is much more competent than the Lannister fleet. So then we cut to Rhaenyra making plans to gain alliances. She's like, hey, we need to check in with Winterfell, River Run, and Storm's End.
Which, real quick, this was the moment of the, like, finally, it's felt like this first season is such a tight one-season story. Like, this is the prelude to what we will eventually get in the next 3 seasons. And to have the moment where the map is being shown over and over again, and then it feels like the world's finally opening up. It feels like we're finally going to start having a little bit more traditional thrones of, all right, we're journeying, and that's a big part compared to the snapshots that we've had that has gotten us to this point. And I think that the world opening up, and eventually we're going to be going to a lot of familiar places, and that's going to be, one, awesome, just because, like, cool, but 2, it's going to be awesome just to have more characters and more pieces on this chessboard, because this running around between these 10 people can only go so far. We will need to bring the alliances. We will need to go and get the armies together and the horses together, and then let's have them run into each other. Vinny, you look like you want to hop in here.
Yeah, just that feeling that you're like talking about too, of like Game of Thrones, like having these big stories that are happening at different places at the same time. That I really felt that when Rhaenyra was telling her 2 sons to go to these places to go check in. I was like, this is it. Like it's starting now. They're gonna have their own issues to deal with in the grand picture of like what this whole show is about. I'm like, here we go. Like this is the moment to me, is when she's sending them off. And I love that. Absolutely love that.
And her oldest son, we don't even know what's happening there yet. Like
Well,
it's awesome that we're finally gonna get what like I love this season for what it is. It is a different set of pace than what we got with the original Game of Thrones, and I commend it for it. They did something different, and they did it in such a fashion that it is one of the best seasons of television I've seen in a long time. And with that, we now that we're getting the what I believe will be the next sort of like maneuver, which is this story being a little bit more through line and the world opening up a bit more to what we know. I am jazzed for that. Like that is like now we're really going, it feels like. In these past 3 episodes, oh my gosh, it's just so damn good. And yeah, what an awesome little moment to actually you took the words out of my mouth. This is the moment that the world feels like it's opening up, and it's brilliant.
Yo, I'm so stoked for season 2. Just seeing Harris get down with whatever dude is running Winterfell. I don't know who it's gonna be. I'm sure they said his name in this episode, but when she said he's more closer to your age than mine, like do some male bonding. Like, are these two gonna become like super dope homies? And like it starts this like bond, and I'm really excited to see him get to Winterfell because I feel like Aaron is kind of that's going to be interesting to see him there as well, because while they would have alliance with the Targaryens, Daemon kind of killed the princess. So like there's that whole wrinkle there, but I'm so excited to see Jacaerys make it to Winterfell.
Yeah, I think what gets me most excited about that is just like seeing where these people and places are at this moment, at this time period. Because when they name drop Cregan Stark, I was like, oh, who's that? Oh, he's like a kid. I'm like we see in Thrones, like the Starks go through so much turmoil, but they still persisted and survived. And we see this guy named Cregan. He's 18 because Jacaerys is like 20 or something like that.
He's way younger than that because we were talking about this before you jumped on. But all of Alicent's kids are older than any of Rhaenyra's kids because she was pregnant with the daughter before Alicent got married.
Yep.
And so he's only like 15. He's like 14, 15.
The son, Jacaerys is maybe a year older than that, but Lucerys is 14. We know that because Rhaenyra is the same age thing.
That's right.
And so we know that the older brother, we're
16.
talking 14, 16, maybe 17. I'm like, this is weird because I'm young, so I like sort of like can tell nowadays of like where people stand above or below my age by a couple years, and the dude looks like as a
what
actor,
they look like doesn't really matter.
Yeah, because fucking Aemon, Aemon's the
like
oldest 17-year-old I've ever
seen. He might be playing a couple years younger, so I'm thinking 17-ish years old is where he's sitting at. But yeah, you're right. Daemon does look like he's like 28, and he's supposed to be like 96 at this point in the show. So
it just like. I just am so fascinated about all that little nitty gritty stuff. I'm like, who is this Korean guy? Why is he in charge of Winterfell if he's like 18? Like, what happened with the Starks up there? Like, did anything crazy happen, or did the dad just die and that was like the next oldest Stark?
Got killed by a boar. It's always a boar.
I feel like the people of Winterfell are extra hard because they're the first line of defense against everything north of the wall. So I feel like they're the most quote unquote Viking of the bunch, or like, just the most hardened in real life. What the fuck's going on? Where the rest of them are kind of have their kingdoms
in terms of climate and their neighbors.
They're wild Alaskans.
I want to see the Night's Watch. Like, what are they up to? Because I think at this point, all of the castles are manned, whereas in Thrones, it was just the one in the middle.
Well, she had that line in the last episode where she said, "Shut the fuck up." Yo, I was like, "Oh, please just send them." So let us see.
Let's see it. Yeah.
There's even stuff like the Gift, which is this land beyond like the wall that the Night's Watch owns. Like, that's not even existing yet, so the Starks can have control of that. Like, I just want to see all of this like small detail stuff. That's why I like just name dropping Cregan. I'm like, I don't know who that is. I want to know who he is. Is he going to be homies with Jacaerys?
Well, I actually thought the other way. I thought that this dude could be like, in this world when it comes to the male like 20-year-old-ish people or like the around that age. There's like the like people that are more honor based, and then there's the people that are more party based and like just like screwing around in brothels and being idiots. But like, I'm excited to see where he lands because. I could see it going the other way of like he's like, hey man, like I need you, we're gonna go to war. And he's like, bro, have a drink, like chill out, man. And we might get the conflict there, or you're right, where it's gonna be the bromance, and maybe it's the character starts there and then slowly comes back to where Rhaenyra's son's at. And I don't know, but that's season 2, and oh man, it's gonna. The fact that season 2 isn't like next week is such a bummer.
Yeah, year and a half. 2 years.
I know. So it's gonna be crazy. It's gonna be crazy. And we then cut to Daemon singing a tune to a dragon. I know somewhere there's the name of the dragon. They didn't say it in the show. I didn't want to look it up, a fear of spoilers, since like the book is already written and everything. But I mean, what did we think of this scene? Like, what did anybody pull from it? Like, again, we were talking earlier about Daemon's like strict respect and reverence for like the Targaryen, lineage and legacy, also with like old Valyria and things along those lines. Like, what did this scene elicit from any of you guys, if anything?
So first, what the fuck was he doing? Was he gaining control of that dragon?
Yeah,
that's what I
think.
Okay.
Well,
who is that dragon? Because it had the neck flap like Aemon's dragon. So it's an oldie.
Beefy.
So he said that there was dragons who don't have
3
masters.
That are just wild.
And then there's also wild dragons.
I got the name Vermithor. He name drops it earlier in the episode.
Badass.
And it was King Jaehaerys' dragon. So Viserys,
So this is one of the ones that isn't wild. This is one of the ones that just doesn't have an owner.
Isn't claimed. Yeah. So what's gonna happen to his dope as fuck red dragon? Is that just gonna be right inside?
I think
double dragons. I mean, like Danny had 3 dragons at the.
That's a fair point. That's a fair point.
So I'm like, maybe he's got a couple now. He's picking them up like Pokemon cards.
I just hope he's like commanding from the little one, and he's telling the big one to like go make like A10 warthog runs.
Yeah, he's got like all signals for him.
Yeah.
I love how different all the dragons look.
Yeah,
I love
and
it
the way
too.
they sound.
With thrones, and you could argue is intentional that all 3 of Daenerys' dragons look pretty much the same, just different colors. I just love like, with the different teeth and like the scales and the complexion. This obviously was Jaehaerys' dragon, and he was king for a long time, and so this is an older dragon as well. If I had to guess, now that you brought it up, I think like because they go into it a little bit with this season, but like showcasing the bonding between a rider and a dragon, and you can only bond to like one dragon, and if someone's bonded to a dragon, you can't claim it. I think Daemon's probably like singing some song that's like, hey, like you're just gonna like hang with like kind of like, obviously you're not gonna have the strict control that a dragon rider would have, but it's gonna like fly with you and just cause havoc.
A song of like
wherever we go.
Of friendship or something that he's singing like, hey, I need your help, please help me.
I also for me, this like I said this earlier in the podcast, but this was a moment where I was like, oh, this is it for this season. I didn't, once again, I'm not checking the time on the show, I'm not checking my phone, so I have no real sense of when the episode is going to start and so on and so forth. And I thought that this was it, where we were going to see Daemon get control of another dragon, which I believe he did. I believe that like that he might not be able to ride it, but they're homies now. They're good. And so
he came out of there.
Yeah. So I thought, like, I was like, this is going to be it for the season. And the fact that we got more after this was, I think, 1, awesome, just more Game of Thrones, but 2, the cherry on top of how are we going to leave this in a really finale sort of mood, especially with episode 9. I felt like after Aegon got crowned, it was sort of just like, all right, like this is like cool and all, but this isn't like, it wasn't big. It wasn't as like when you think of the Game of Thrones moments. It wasn't for me a huge Game of Thrones.
Yo, I did not think this was the
that felt
ending,
big
and
to
I would have been so torqued if this was the ending. I'm
Yeah,
not gonna lie.
been
I would have been
pissed.
so
Exactly.
fucking
Not much
tilted.
happened right before that for that to be the end.
I always play a game whenever I watch Thrones of like just keeping track, like in my head. I'm like, okay, it's been a while. Like, are we coming to the end? And then they'll like hang on the scene, and then it cuts to something else. I'm like, okay, cool. Like,
Yeah. I have one of those moments too. Like definitely when Daemon was checking out the dragon, I'm like, all right, cut to black right there. And then I mean, we'll get to it later on too. But there's a point as Lucerys is getting back onto his dragon. I'm like, all right, they're just cutting right here. Like, no, they've left the shot on a little too long. Like it's gonna say directed by, right away. But dude, they debated me like at least 3 times in the end of this episode.
Yeah, seriously. So yeah, Rhaenyra sends Lucerys and Jaehaerys out to gain allies. We cut to Lucerys arriving at Storm's End. Okay, first off, we get to see Storm's End. Let's freaking go, dude! Like we didn't see it at all. We didn't get to see it at all on Thrones. I think there was moments where they're in that area with like Stannis and Renly, but like it was just like random hills and crap like that. Like how dope was Storm's End?
It was
like,
fucking sick.
Oh my
It was
gosh,
pretty nice.
cool.
They have
Yeah.
a nice big courtyard. I'm like, where's he gonna land?
yeah.
Where's it
Yeah,
going?
he arrives at
I think
Storm's
about weird
End.
things when I'm watching Game of Thrones.
And fortunately, Lucerys' dragon Arax is pretty tiny. It's almost like a little like moped or something like that.
Yeah, I
He's
was
got the
That's a
most
good
of
word.
dragons.
Aemon's hunting his ass down in like a fucking cougar, like
Hummer.
the fucking military vehicles, the up armored vehicles, and he's just on a moped running away.
Just-
Yeah, so we see Lucerys land, and in the flashes, almost like a Jurassic Park kind of
Oh, it's
like
so
Oh
cool.
shot.
god.
In the flashes of the storm, you see Vhagar,
Oh
who is
god.
the biggest dragon, right? The biggest dragon.
Tell
in
me
the
why I
world.
forgot that. I thought that was the dragon that Daemon just went and like sang to, and I'm like, oh, interesting. And then I realized,
Yeah. So
Oh,
Vhagar,
I
biggest
love it.
dragon. Go ahead.
I love how like you have him in this grandiose courtyard. You have Lucerys and Eris just like in this huge. It's so big. Like we're talking about how awesome it was to go and be here, and then to go and see the dragon
Towering
over the
over that
courtyard,
courtyard.
towering.
he couldn't
and
even land in the
terrifying.
courtyard, dude.
Yeah.
Talk about just once again showing not telling. It was like holy shit, it's about to go down. Like
Aemon's-
it is with the one shot. It was just game over.
Aemon's like the kid who has a giant jacked up truck and he has to park at the back of the parking lot because his truck won't fit in one stall. Also,
Yeah.
why the fuck didn't Lucerys leave when he
Leave,
saw that
right?
dragon?
I
You
was like,
know,
wait, why
Pissed
did
out.
he just
you
fucking
pissed
dip?
this guy off no more than a month ago, and
He's
you're
like,
gonna.
I'm not
I-
supposed to fight anyway. I'm just gonna go.
We'll
I am
talk
going.
about
I'm
it.
handing the note to the guard. I am handing the note to
Yeah.
the guard. I am not walking in there. I'm like, hey,
Wow.
bro,
I love
bro,
that he
get
passed
this
to the side.
Yeah, he
Yeah,
just
but
holds it up.
this-
Squire.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I was like, okay, something's gonna go down, and I'm like, just from Thrones past seasons, I'm like, is one of these guards just gonna randomly like stab him in the face or
Damn.
something? Like, I didn't know it was gonna happen.
But once again,
but-
it's
They didn't
it's
even greet him.
parlay.
It was so weird.
It was hey, well, because I think that they were like, "What are you gonna offer, Roro?" But when he says, "I got nothing, I'm just a messenger," I'm like, it makes sense that he's not gonna die in this scene. Like, this is not where he gets got, sort of deal. And then the fact that Aemon gives him the out, where he's like, "Hey, man, I'm not gonna murder you. I just am gonna like take your eye." For me, I was like, "You got the dragon, bro. That was the whole deal. You got the dragon if we got the eye, sort of deal." And now you're asking for the eye too? That's not how that works. That's not how that works. And so the fact that the rest of the episode plays out how it is, I'm like, dude, you're a little bitch. Just like, gosh,
Yeah.
I
He just
hate him.
So do y'all think he was trying to hurt him when he was hunting him down? Because I thought he was gonna.
We'll get to that later.
Okay,
We'll
okay,
get to
okay,
that
okay,
later, 'cause
okay.
I have a quote that is like, yeah. So yeah, Lucerys arrives. He sees Vhagar. He's like, man, I got beat, man. He took the shortcut. He brings a letter to Boris Baratheon, and Boris has his maester read it. So do we like that? Made me
He
think
can't
Boris,
read.
He's illiterate.
he
Yeah.
can't.
he can't
For
This
sure.
read.
dude's the freaking Lord of Storm's End, and he can't read. Like,
Nah. What does he need to read for?
He
He's
also
gotta-
has like no teeth, dude. So he's just like
Yeah.
a warrior. I feel
Yikes.
like, or just a glutton.
They're
more or
like a
less.
conqueror's
Yeah.
kingdom. you
Yeah,
know?
yeah, and yeah, as we see with like Robert and Stannis, like they're pretty hardy like folk.
They like their eats, man. They like those medieval eats.
Yeah.
And in fairness of Boros, he's like, look, like I didn't even make that oath, dude. That was my dad. And the Greens, they promised me Aemond to marry one of my daughters. Like, like what do you got? And like honestly, the Greens have the way better deal. Like tying Aemond to their house. They'll have Vagar, you know, I'm assuming on weekends or, you know, I don't know the custody yet. But and then obviously Lucerys is just not equipped for this kind of conversation.
Yeah, Boris is like, which one of my daughters will you marry? And he's like,
me, I'm lying. I'm lying. I'll take that one.
No, you're trying to get rid of the older one. Let's take her.
In that Ringerverse podcast last week, they talked about like how Aemon wasn't betrothed to anybody, and I was like, that's always like something you got to watch out for in this world.
As soon as they betrothed both sons, my fucking alarm was going off of like, oh, you played your cards early. You hit them with that fucking wild card +4 really fucking early.
Yeah, and it's a bad move. Like, I don't want to harp on too much, but like looking back, and now once again, now that we have the full product of this first season, you really get to see where the mistakes were made by both of the girls. And that I would say that's probably her biggest mistake, was the fact that she used all of her ammunition. She's now just solely going off of everybody swearing to her years ago, and there's a lot of people that died since then that were people that swore to her. So it's now like she can't offer a lot. She doesn't have King's Landing because she's out of there. She can't offer her sons. Like, I'm like, you and Daemon are gonna need to get busy again and have a couple more just to be able to ship them off to people. I know.
Even Rhaenys says in that moment when she brings the deal, is like, hey, this is like a desperate move. And then Rhaenyra is like, does it matter like if it is or not? Like, because it's a sweet deal, that's why she accepts it. But obviously Lucerys is not equipped. He's 14. Like when I was 14, I was like crank calling GameStops and stuff. Not negotiating like treaties with different kingdoms. You know what I mean?
He already said he couldn't do it, and then he got there and he couldn't do it.
Yeah. He realizes he's, you know, outwitted, outmatched. So he's like, hey, I'm gonna leave.
He did his best.
Yeah, he did his best. He delivered the message. Nobody stabbed him.
And he did what his mom asked for. Like, he could have fought one. We all know he would have lost, but like he could have fought and he opens this confrontation with Aemon, and Aemon calls him Lord Strong. And like that for me held so much weight of just like, hey man, now that our moms are going at it sort of deal, we're allowed to go at it. Like, we are now in conflict with each other, and I'm going to throw as little petty shit as possible to get you off your game. Whatever it takes to get you guys off your game, I'm going to do anything I can to give us the upper hand. And so opening with that, I was like, oh, we're going. Like, this is it. And then when the eye patch comes up, I'm like, that's the coolest jewel
What
I've
was
ever
that?
seen.
Like a diamond or something?
It was like
It
was like a sapphire.
His eyes so bad.
Yeah.
It was so badass.
It looks sick, man. It was like
why doesn't
another day, man.
Why doesn't he roll it around without an eye patch? That looks so much more threatening.
Fuck the eye patch.
Yeah, come on, son. Get with
I
the drip.
think if like it gets my thought process, I thought the same thing, Chance. I was like, dude, you look so badass with this thing. But I'm like, if he gets like poked maybe in that eye and it gets pushed back into some shit, I'm sorry, Vinny. I don't want you to.
If he gets poked in any of his eyes, it's bad.
It's a rock compared to something that's like.
The other one is way more squishy, so he's likely
They're
to.
both vulnerable.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
Okay,
I get where you're coming from, but it's your fucking eyes. Anything going near him's bad news bears.
True.
Yeah. So Lucerys is like, all right, you know, the vibe is killed at this party. I'm dipping. He gets on his dragon Arax and
moped.
Immediately heads back to Dragonstone. And again, Aemon must have just immediately like ran out like the side entrance back to Vagar, because
Baratheon's an accomplice at this point to child murder. Like,
yeah.
he saw him take off out the side entrance as soon as
He ran.
Yeah.
I also like that he's betrothed to one of the daughters, and I could just see him be like, "Peace out," and just like starting like sprinting because like he's just leaving her behind. I don't know which one he's betrothed to, but like he's just like, I'm out of here.
I'm not taking you
I'm
along for
dead
this
on."
murder.
Yeah.
So yeah, Lucerys is like, I'm dipping. He heads out. Aemon ends up chasing him. We get this
He's
really
already
cool.
gone.
We get this really cool chase sequence where, again, kind of like Jurassic Park, like we see like flashes and shadows of Vhagar. This awesome discrepancy of size from Arax, literally the smallest dragon, almost like a personal like one man vehicle.
Is that because
to
he's
Vhagar,
young?
Yeah, it's a younger
Yeah.
dragon. Yeah.
Okay.
All dragons just over time will live to hundreds of years, and honestly, just like with genetics, like some will grow bigger or whatever, but like he's a younger
He's just a
dragon.
baby.
How cool is it that you know exactly what's gonna happen when like Lucerys, I guess.
Lucerys.
He's flying away and he's like constantly looking behind his shoulder. Like
Oh,
you
so
know
much
it's happening.
stress.
Oh, it's a freaking like nasty storm too, because
Yeah,
storm's
it's
and it's
gross out there.
storming all
Yeah.
the freaking time, man. It's like
Right.
Seattle.
It was stressful. I was
Shout
like,
out to
oh,
Seattle.
You already know
Favorite
some
city.
shit's going down.
So well shot. The shadows and the moment where like I would say that like there's different scenes and sequences, and him going into the canyons and making like using what his dragon is better
Yeah.
at. Like the only thing he's got
Smart.
is size and
And speed.
being small. Exactly.
Not
And
even well.
so
I feel like it's the bull versus like the mouse, right? Because the bull can run fast in a straight line, and the mouse can outmaneuver it.
yeah.
Yeah.
But at this, and that was the funniest part.
And then
where
he made
I'm
a
like,
mistake.
This is almost like light cycles where I'm like, all it takes is just him to like one time not go right or left. If you let him go in a straight line and intercept you, it's over. And man, that last shot that we get is so just pretty. Like I don't have a better word for it. It's just like just eye candy. You can talk us through it, Brett, but like man, that the white versus the dark of the storm, and it's almost like there's the moment of hope because there's the light and it's coming out, and then what happens? We all saw it. It's nasty and it's awesome and badass.
Yeah. So
I knew
we
there
see
was no hope.
Yeah.
we see Arax, using his size and speed to kind of navigate away from Vhagar and Aemon. But I want to bring up this quote from Viserys in episode 1, and we'll talk. And I want to bring up a quote from Daemon at the beginning of this episode, and it's been echoed, I think, throughout the season, and even in like season 1 of Thrones with that Viserys, Daenerys's brother. But like that, like we didn't conquer Westeros, like not ours, not because of our blood or whatever, but like the dragons did. That's what Daemon says at the beginning of this episode. And then Viserys, remember in episode 1, to Rhaenyra in the crypt with Balerion Skull, he says, the idea that we can control the dragons is an illusion. Because as we see here, Arax, without Lucerys's control, Dracarys is on Vhagar, which stokes that conflict. And then we see with Aemon, he doesn't want to, he was like laughing and kind of joking around when he's like messing around with Lucerys. And then Vhagar, after getting a flame to his face, just wants blood.
Snaps.
And he literally chomps Arax and Lucerys
Was
in
the
one
was the
gulp.
flame? I can't remember, but was that instructed?
No.
No.
Because
Okay,
he's
so
yelling
both
at him.
actions by the dragons.
Yeah.
Both actions
Yeah.
were not instructed, and that's a perfect
Which is
mirror
not
to
how
what-
it is in the
what was
books, which
said.
I think is an interesting twist, how they're constantly softening these characters through the season and actually making them real people instead of something being told third hand. And like, because in the books, it is just straight up, he fucking chases him out of the stronghold and kills him. Like,
Which I think though, to go to the big screen, basically, it's necessary to have those emotions on display, to have it be something that's a little bit more, like, as awful as Aemon is, and he
it was an
could have
accident.
been like, hey, I want to kill him.
I think he's
like,
smart. He's
I think
awful, but he's smart, and he
Yeah.
knew that was not smart because you saw it in his face at the end. Like,
Yeah.
fuck,
No,
I
no,
fucked
yeah.
up.
He kind of like blinks and like looks around like in this face of like pure desperation, almost like, okay, I just started the war.
Yeah, not
like,
that I think he cared that he died, because I'm sure he didn't, but he knows he fucked up.
The repercussions are going to be horrible for him.
Also, that's his nephew. Like, and I know that doesn't carry a ton of weight, but it carries some. Where I'm like, he's not in the throne room. He's not like, hey, I want to kill you. He's like, I want to take your eye. And then for it to play out how it is, I think he's just like, I just screwed
intimidating.
up.
He's trying to intimidate.
Yeah, exactly. He was never trying to hurt him unless he drew first. He kind of was trying to bait him a little bit, I saw. Like, obviously, he's got his hand on the sword. He's ready to go if he needs to. But because of his mother's words, he's like, I'm not doing this. I'm not going to go and get absolutely clapped by my uncle. And so to see it play out how it does is awesome.
Which I want to bring up to reply to you, Chance. The beauty, and it's been not so in some cases, like with Rhaenyra's like decision last episode. But the beauty of this story, in terms of the show version, is that and we've talked about it before over a couple of the episodes, is like Thrones was like a direct narrative story from POVs of like characters, where this story is like third party accounts from a few like people from other people that they hear like hearsay and rumors and stuff like that.
He said, she said type shit. Right.
And so with the accountings of the book, and it's like, hey, this happened this way, that's like, yeah, I think it's awesome. And I feel like in most cases with this season of allowing the creators to kind of make decisions or add creative spins or softening, as you said, to certain characters and actions, because I do feel like that is with the decision of like the unruly nature of the dragons. Like, I just brought up 2 quotes from 2 characters this season, like that, and back in Thrones with Daenerys dragons, like a lot of times they were just unruly and
doing their thing,
uncontrolled. I think that's just the nature of these beasts.
So to go back to the question I was going to ask, if we thought he meant to kill him, I do think he meant to maim him. I do think he meant to hurt him in some way. I think the ultimate for him is to take the eye. I think that is like what he wants. But I don't think he wanted to take it as far as killing. And so when that happens, and Vegas and everybody else already talked about it, like that's why I think he's so shocked, is like he always meant to like kind of take it too far, but not that too far.
Yeah, I mean, they were both like, no, I didn't say do that. And they were screaming at their dragons the entire like last couple of seconds. And
to like double back to a point, I think it was Nick that was talking about like him not caring that he died. Like, let's say he's 20, 19 or whatever. He was not ready to take a life. No matter how much he trained, he was not ready to, and not a family member. Like, I don't like, just based off of like his age, and although he's like a tactical guy, he's trained with his M4A1 for so long, and he thinks that he knows what the fuck he's doing, and then he's presented with the situation, and it's a lot grittier than what he thought it'd be. And so that's why, like, what I'm kind of coming at it from, and kind of why I drew those conclusions, is just like I don't think he was ready to pull that trigger.
Yeah, they're both like my thing too. At the end of the episode, I was like, they're both kids.
Yeah,
like, they both are like, Kid is a long term of like, he might be like 20, 22, 23 there, but they're still so young that, and like also pretty gosh darn sheltered, where they've been like very much having this like, hey, you're gonna do some training, you're gonna do your homework, like you're doing the like kid stuff. And for him to take a life, it is, yeah, you can see the dumbfoundedness on his face for a couple reasons. One being that he made a dumb decision, but 2, like the weight of taking a life. You could see that through the acting.
And both second sons.
Yeah.
Which that's been a through line throughout the whole season with Daemon, and turns out Corlys wasn't a second son, but he had that speech in episode 2 about second sons. So that's been a through line throughout this entire season of second sons, and birthright, and having to earn their place and things like that. So that's interesting that those 2 came into conflict here. We then get the next scene where word is relayed to Daemon, who relays it
so good
to Rhaenyra about Luke's death. And this is we brought up earlier the acting from Emma Darcy, like her like staggering, her like posture was like unreal. Like she should get an award just for that. Like
Yeah.
like
the
incredible.
best acting that you don't see their face.
Exactly. Like it was you felt all the emotion that she was
Absolutely.
feeling from that.
Everybody here was probably just silent. Just
Yeah.
like,
Yep.
Oh yeah.
She lost
From
2
that-
kids in a day or 2 days.
2 kids
Yeah.
in an episode.
Quick succession.
And- And then we see her stink face too, where she's like, "All right, we're throwing hands."
Dude,
Crying,
pissed
but
off.
also
Yeah,
this
Snarling.
means war.
Yeah.
so good.
About to go
Yeah.
Dracarys on all y'all motherfuckers.
What a great end to the episode. I don't think I could have asked for like
yeah.
a better double scene to kind of wrap it up on.
I was really
Like a good half of the time, you're wondering, like, is she gonna choose peace? Is she gonna choose war? And then
Not now. Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, it like for what this season was, which is getting both of these characters to the point of going to war, getting Alicent, getting Rhaenyra to the point of going to war. The way that it all happens and unfolds is so brilliant because we did have this calm, cool, collected girl, and we still at the end of the episode see that aside of Rhaenyra, the fact that she's not sobbing, the fact that she's not screaming or falling into Daemon in this moment, which like are all rational things to do when you lose a child. It was so well done, so well thought out that I like it's really just impressive to me how amazing the season was and where we started and where it ends, and now what season 2 will be, which is the beginning of this war, is going to be brilliant because we know the fire that's behind both of these awesome actresses and awesome characters. And like for me, this episode, I'm like kind of the worst because I've always been on the green side. Like I've always been like Alicent's my gal. I like Otto, even though he can be creepy sometimes. Like he's like that's been my bag for this entire podcast. But an episode like this, come on, how do you want to root for the kid murderers, like that, like it's a tough place to be. And so no, it's a really awesome way
the
to
look on
end an episode
Allison's
in a
face
season.
when she finds out. Can't wait to see it.
Oh, she's gonna beat. I love that Alicent has already beaten the crap out of Aegon, and now Aemon is gonna get the crap beat out of him too. Like there's gonna be some hitting, there's gonna be some screaming, and rightfully so because
She's
man,
taking the fucking belt off, bro. She's not having none of this shit.
You did what?
Yeah.
How long do you guys think the jump is going to be between the first and second season? Do you think it is going to be an immediate pickup after this, or do you think we're going to have a couple weeks worth of time where like a major event is about to happen and we're kind of like catching up to that?
I want to say no more than 6 months. No more than I think
Yeah,
that we
that's
jump
fair.
in. She has kind of recuperated from what's happened, and they're now placing their pawns. I really hope Jacaerys has already gone to Rain, and we see him in Winterfell.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I think that we're gonna open up with Jacaerys and Winterfell. I think that like we got.
I don't think it's gonna be too much forward.
Yeah.
We're gonna see.
Because here's the thing, I want to see that. Like that's what I hope happens, and these creators are so dang good, and I think that like, and for lack of a better term, I'm an idiot, and like I'm just loving all this, and they know that there's a lot of people like myself that just eats this up, and going to Winterfell, seeing it, and having the world feel like it's expanding, and allowing for that to sort of hopefully be the through line of the. To make the story feel bigger, have the world be bigger compared to the time jumps that we were getting. Hopefully that helps propel it a little bit by getting to see Winterfell. And I think obviously it's 1 familiar, but 2, it's something that like me and Chance for like 4-ish minutes of this podcast, we're just like, what's gonna be the dynamic of these characters? And like that's exciting. We want to see that. And so hopefully they give us the goods.
Yeah, and so that is where the episode ends. And so I'll have a couple of questions real quick here, and then we'll wrap up until 2024. So my first question for you guys is, how did we think Olivia Cook and Emma Darcy, primarily, and some of the newer actors for like Jason Luke, like how do we think they came into these roles coming in halfway through the season? I know earlier on we talked about Millie Alcock and Emily Carey, who played young Rhaenyra and young Alicent, and how we just really grew to love their portrayals of these characters. How do we feel about these new actors coming in and taking over? Do we feel like they did the job?
I think they're absolutely knocking it out of the park. I think the initial time jump episode, I was a little bit like, man, but I really liked the young versions. Like, they were great. And it was just like 5 episodes is like a small amount of time in the grand scheme of things to, like, I don't know, emotionally connect to characters. But I thought, like, I was already there with the young versions of the cast. But I mean, it only took episode 6 and 7 where I was feeling already all in on both of them. I think they nailed it. I think they really, really nailed it.
Yeah.
By the time we got to episode 8, I was like, all right, these are good characters, and like I felt comfortable with them. Like, it wasn't as jarring as episode 6 and 7, just because we had such amazing actresses 1 through 5, and then 8 was when they went balls to the wall. Like, they absolutely nailed those scenes so well that it got to the point where, like, I can't see anyone else playing these characters as these older versions because they're so damn good. And then these last 2 episodes, once again, they are the pinnacle of this show. They are getting their own episodes, basically, of how they're both handling this conflict, and they nail it. They absolutely rush it. And I can't see them as other people at this point. But if they want to age them up till 95 and then bring in new actresses, they go ahead, because they'll probably do it as well as they've done it thus far.
Yeah. Vegas, how do you feel like they performed?
I had no issues with the acting. I think the acting was great. I think the only issue I had was initially when the younger actors became kind of estranged because of the marriage between Alicent and the king. And then it jumped to the future, and you're kind of still not used to the fact that they're not friends, and now you have to get used to this new dynamic. That was a little hard for me, but the actresses, they're amazing. I didn't have any problem getting used to them.
Yeah. Chance?
So I'm famously the one that, like, did not take to these actors as quickly. I really bonded with the younger actors, especially Millie Alcock. I thought that she was doing a phenomenal job. And then jumping ahead, I thought that the new actors were doing a great job, but I really wasn't connecting with Emma Darcy specifically. They were giving an excellent performance, but I just wasn't fully sold on them yet. And going into this last episode, I was completely sold on her, and looking back now, I completely understand where like the things that I wasn't quite as sold on now, like, make sense to me. And I thought that they just really, really nailed it. And they're actually, like, one of my favorite actors of this entire show now. I really, really like Emma Darcy.
Yeah, I didn't really know those two beforehand, and I thought there's obviously a little bit of a transitory period just to, hey, where are we at, and how are these characters going to relate to each other now with literally different people performing the roles. But yeah, I think they were easily just as good, if not better, than the younger actors. I'd probably have to give, if I had to give a grade, I'd probably give Olivia Cook an A+, and then Emma Darcy an A. They both were fantastic, but I definitely think Olivia Cook really, really nailed the Alicent role. So yeah, going on to the next question here. What were your overall thoughts on the entire season? We kind of talked about it a little bit over time here, but real quick, thoughts on the season in terms of how it compared to, just Game of Thrones, what we knew before Game of Thrones season 1, things like that. How did we feel? Vinny, I'll start with you.
I mean, when we did the first podcast on this, I thought the pilot was incredible of getting back into the Thrones world, because I felt, a lot of us felt a little bit burned after the end of season 8, and just like, what was it going to be like? Like, how is this going to go jumping back into Thrones? Like, can they do it? Are they going to be able to do it? And I really think they did. Like, they really did it. They brought it this season, all 10 episodes. I'm excited about each one. Each one has a great moment, and sometimes tons of great moments in it. I think the pacing was great overall. The characters are great. The storylines are great. They're just setting up so much more good stuff in the future. I'm just really excited about Thrones, and I wasn't expecting to be this excited about it. So I think they did a great job.
Yeah. What about you, Nick?
This is peak television. This is must-watch television. I sat down. I had about 10-ish minutes to get myself together after the episode finished, getting water, just hanging out for a little bit, and sort of digressing for the podcast. And it popped in my head. And I was like, "You're such a rankings guy. I rank everything." And if we're talking overall Thrones, where is this rank? And for me, it is the third best Thrones season that we have. And this is once again just personal opinion. Find 6 and 4 for me, and then there's other seasons we don't need to get into Nick Evans' ranking of Game of Thrones. But I've always looked at season 4 and season 6 of Game of Thrones as perfection, through and through, and the peaks that you get in those seasons. I going into this show didn't expect to leave with certain peaks that we had, but through episode 3's last battle, or episode 8's dinner scene, or throne scene, even this last scene that we have in these dragon chase scene that we got, this is peak television. This is as good as it gets, and 2024 can't come as fast as possible, because the way that they're telling the story is brilliant, and I enjoy it so much. I legitimately 10 out of 10 season of television, in my opinion.
And just to add on to that too, I think Game of Thrones has like a quality standard that not a lot of other shows have, when it comes to just the actors that are casted, the cinematography, and the way things are. Just like it's a complete package. It is a TV show that is just of such huge scale, and then they actually fit the shoes that they make for themselves, instead of having those giant shoes and then jumping in with tiny little feet.
Yeah. Chance, what did you think, man? Is comparing it to season 1 or just Thrones entirety, how did you feel about the entirety of this season?
So I remember going into the season kind of hearing, and I can't remember exactly from who or from what source, but I had the notion that this was kind of going to be setting up the rest of the seasons, right? And they were going to kind of this was a prelude, if you will, to the prequel. And kind of going in with that, I think I was a lot more open to the time jumps and everything, and I think that set me up a lot more of like, this isn't to get into the nitty gritty, that's saved for later. Now, is there moments I wish they would have gotten into a little bit more? Of course. But kind of knowing getting into it that it was always meant to be the setup for these seasons, I thought it was fantastic. I think that it is really a standout when we've kind of been getting these Marvel shows and Disney Plus shows and Netflix shows that maybe aren't hitting quite as much. You know, you have the ones that, you know, like the Stranger Things, or for certain people, She-Hulk, like that really pop out. But to get, you know, this quality of television back, and to feel like we're getting a high quality season of Game of Thrones, it was really nice. And I'm both sad and happy that we're getting a season 2. Sad that it's coming so far away, but also happy that it is like that. It's just an embarrassment of riches between this and Rings of Power for me, and I could not ask for more. I really ate well this fall.
Let's go, dude. Let's go. Vegas, what are your thoughts on this season?
I think Vinny put it well with the shoes. They really, you come into a Game of Thrones-esque series and you have some expectations. You know, you want to see your hot sex. We got that. You want to see your gruesome violence. We got that. We got balls on a chopping block. What was that, first episode?
First episode.
Emotional trauma. We had three really awful birth scenes. I guess 2, and then 1 where she decided to just murder herself. You got your incest. They brought everything that Game of Thrones you expect from Game of Thrones, and they brought it, and it all made sense. And then there was also so many new aspects, like the time jumps and the fact that it's all very centralized. You know, you're not jumping all over the place. And I enjoyed everything, and they put it so well together that, you know, you don't even think, you know, that you're missing out on something once you're through it.
Yeah. Well said. For me, kind of like with Chance, like I was very tenuous about the beginning of the show. I was like how Vinny said, I was like, man, like it kind of lost it at the end of Thrones. Like, what's going on? What's going to happen here? But like knowing a little bit about the source material and how it's written from start to finish, some of the showrunners who were there directed some of the best stuff from Thrones. Um, and then like when watching episode 1, seeing like Matt Smith's performance really was like, okay, like we're back. And this is one of those shows, like Nick said, where like the world stops, like especially for me, like even with like Marvel shows and some Disney shows, and Star Wars shows, like there's sometimes where like, oh, like I won't watch it when it comes out. I'll watch it like the next day or whatever. But like Thrones is like 8 p.m. Central. I'm sitting on my
Appointment.
couch, locked in.
Yeah.
Like,
I
Go ahead.
witnessed Brett watching Game of Thrones, and he is zeroed in. He was gamer leaned forward, not paying attention to anything else around. I remember making a comment. He was in it, not even listening to me. I was like, all right, we're not talking. Let's
Bounced
keep
off of
watching."
his wall. Just was not
Yes,
entering.
yes, he's in a bubble.
like I could have gone to this Austin FC soccer playoff game tonight, and it was at 7 p.m. an hour before. I was like, nah, like I'm not. Like luckily they won, so I can maybe go next week. But I was like, nah, I'm watching Thrones. I'm watching House of the Dragon over.
It's
Hot-
like it's
hot D.
legitimately. I didn't say this in when I was discussing season 1, but it's important. Which like I don't know why it has that weight for myself, and I
Yes.
think that that's shared amongst everybody on this podcast. Where
Like-
it is important to us that like these characters in this world feels important and it's real to some regard, and the mystical nature and how beautifully shot it is. I it's almost romantic how amazing the show is, and I
Yeah.
can't commend it enough because it is. It literally like I'm like it's the best part of my week, and yeah.
Like, and I could be in my own bubble on this in terms of like who I talk to with Thrones, but like with a lot of the Marvel shows, with a lot of the Star Wars shows, I don't watch some of that other prestige television, but I just general sense on the internet, like I don't know anybody like when House of the Dragon season 1 episode 1 premiered, you saw that video of like all the apartment rooms like
Yeah.
lighting up the same way. Like I don't see that with literally any other show ever. Like
Yeah.
on air right now. Like I just don't see that. Like maybe I think with WandaVision there was kind of that vibe, but that was still like during quarantine, so that's just
But that was also unexpected. We were coming hot off of Endgame. We're talking about this pandemic world, and we were grasping for straws, and we didn't know what these Marvel shows could be.
Yeah.
We know what Game of Thrones is. We know the quality that title holds, and to go and be a little bit burnt from season 8, it's amazing that they were able to draw us back in as hard and fast as they were and kept us in for 10 straight episodes of pure appointment. Sit your ass in the chair, turn your phone off, turn the lights off, grab a fat snack, and let's have a good time television.
Yeah, I you mentioned something there that like it feels important, and I can't describe why. Like I can't put words to it. Like
This is so important to me.
I love pop culture stuff and Star Wars and Marvel. Like right now I'm an episode behind on Andor. I love Andor, right? But like something about like there's no way I could be an episode behind on House of Dragon. Like no shot.
Oh,
like when that's
no,
coming out,
yeah.
like I gotta be on it.
I can't be an hour behind. I like
Yeah.
it is
Dude.
legitimately
Yeah, times in Thrones history where I literally didn't watch. I was an hour late, and like I checked Twitter like in that hour
Yeah.
span, and somebody was like, "Hey, this dude died." I was like, "Thanks, dude."
Yeah.
Like, yeah, like you really don't see anything like this, and years away after season 8, it still had that same juice. Like, and I just love the nuanced storytelling of this season and of this story and conflict. Like with I said it before a bunch of times, but like with Thrones, like, oh, Lannisters, they suck largely. You know, Starks are good largely. But with here, it's like a little more nuanced, and it's just
You could take a lot at face value from just watching it, but like the discussions that we have about like certain characters and things that happen in events, you can get pretty deep with it. There's a lot of layers that you can get into if you choose to, like, I don't know, uncover
We
it a little bit.
could be talking about Laris and the feet scene for like 30 minutes if
Sure,
we want
dude,
to,
amen.
okay? Like, so the fact that we didn't is impressive, and we should all get pat on the back for that alone. But I totally get it, man. Like, this is this is just it. Like, this is, I'm looking forward to Succession, which is one of my favorite shows on television. I'm looking forward to the Last of Us show, and I'm looking forward to Arcane season 2. Like, these for me, these prestigious television shows, but there is something about Game of Thrones that's even holds more weight than that.
And hats off to obviously George R.R. Martin for writing this, but it's like it's not like a narrative like story. It's like a historical tome, but he still like seeded all these like awesome character developments and traits with all of these incredibly deep and nuanced characters. And also to the showrunner Sue for taking that, that seed and then planting it and allowing it to grow in all these super dope ways. But we'll cut to the last question here. We touched on it a little bit already, so it might be shorter. But what do we want / expect from season 2? That could be two different things for you guys, or it could be aligned in some way. But what do we want or expect from season 2? Nick, I'll start with you.
More feet. No, I'm kidding. I want
dirty boy.
Someone's gonna clip that. That's gonna come to bite me in a couple of years. But no, in all actuality, I just want more of what the laundry list that Vegas said. More of all of it. More of battles, more political intrigue, more steamy sex, more balls being chopped off. Like, give it to me tomorrow, please. Like, it is the most captivating shit. But like, the eye candy that's there when it comes to those ideas are all interesting, but at the same time, what really keeps my butt in the seat and not looking at Twitter is the characters. And so wherever they go, I'm just so excited to see where they go. And I don't have expectations. I don't really go into the show making too many predictions. I just like to see what they're going to give me on any given day and appreciate it for what it is. And sometimes it's me and Chance saying, hey, the end of episode 9, there's something stupid. Like, I can admit when they do dumb or stupid or a little bit off-kiltered decisions, but like, most of the time they're pretty damn good decisions. And that's what I'm excited to see in season 2.
Vegas, what do you most want or expect to happen in season 2?
I think when Vinny mentioned earlier how when Rhaenyra's 2 sons went off to their own directions, and you kind of just got that feeling of like, this is it, that like this, it's happening. I just want more of that feeling. I want all the intricacies of all the different characters and all their mini stories, just like old Game of Thrones style. I love this season, but I do love the way Game of Thrones lays out their stories and gets you invested in so many characters that you can't even remember them until they show up again.
We're gonna need Cargill Bowl, just like we got Clegane Bowl.
I remember initially watching Game of Thrones and doing that like family tree, like having to write it out or look up some sort of map because I could not remember anybody. Like, who's that?
Chance, most want or expect season 2. Hit me with it.
I don't really want to go in with expectations because I came into this show without expectations and I was pleasantly surprised. A want, however, I've already discussed. It's Jacaerys, whoever's in charge of Gregor or whatever the fuck his name is. I want to see them being homies. I want to see them like being the dynamic duo of Jacaerys kind of can look up to this man and he gets a little bit of that Stark wisdom that they're so infamous for. We didn't talk about it in the main podcast, but when Daemon says that something about Starks never breaking a promise or breaking an oath, right? Like, and I think that there's a lot of that side of ruling that Jacaerys could take a lot from. So I'm excited to see that.
Yeah. Vinny?
My answer is just the same as Chance, too. I went into this season not having crazy expectations or expectations at all. I just was interested and intrigued. And I'm going to approach the second season like that too, because I am like incredibly happy right now with just everything we got from this. But just like Vegas said too, I want the expansion. I love the expansion of like feels more vast in its characters and locations and stuff. That's super exciting for me.
Oh, one thing I forgot to mention is just the dragons in general. It was one of my favorite parts of the show. Just getting to know all the different dragons, all the history of the dragons. You see more dragons. I want to see lots more dragons.
Shout out to the sound designer that made all of the dragons sound different. And
Yeah.
on that Ringer podcast, they were talking about how that one dragon had like that little squelch sound from episode 9, Rhaenysra's dragon. And it was because it was blocking its fire hole. So dragons have a fire hole, and that is my new favorite thing.
That sounds like me after I eat Flamin' Hot Cheetos. So we don't need to talk about that. Brett, what's your expectation and want from season 2?
So I'm kind of aligned with Vegas, where I just, not that it's an expectation in terms of just because we know what we're getting into with this kind of show. I'm just excited for the handshaking and the deal making going on, because we got a little taste of it here.
Cash and Nicks and snap and check or whatever the fuck.
Something like that.
You know what I meant.
So yeah, I'm excited to see alliances build and fall apart. All of that goodness that Thrones is known for. And I'm really excited for it because we literally got a little snack with Vhagar crunching on Arax and Lucerys. I'm excited for more dragon on dragon combat.
Vermintile or whatever his name.
Vermithor? Yeah.
Yeah, Vermithor
the dragons
versus
die out. Are we gonna see it?
I was wondering real quick, was Lucerys's dragon smaller because they eventually get they talk about how they're getting smaller, right? And Rhaenysra's dragon used to be Rhaenyra's mom's dragon, or Jacaerys' mom's dragon, right? And she's not nearly as big as Aemon's dragon, but are we already seeing them starting to get smaller in domestic life? And
I think so, with the dragon pit. How Daenerys was like, this was like the end of our, our dynasty was when we built this and housed it. And it's a fact that dragons just grow less big when they're kept in captivation versus allowing to fly around. And obviously Aemon with Vhagar, that's the oldest dragon. It's massive. It was, out in the open forever. But I'm willing to bet a lot of Team Black's dragons are going to be a little bit bigger than Green's, since Green's are in King's Landing and the Dragon Pit. And with Team Black, they're on Dragonstone, they're in caves, and they're just hanging out and stuff like that. So,
a lot of the ones,
that's what I'd wager.
A lot of the ones at King's Landing are newer.
Yeah, and they're younger as well.
Yeah. They're all mostly newer, younger dragons, except for obviously the big honcho.
How many dragons is it going to take that boy down? And I guarantee that happens in season 3.
Oh yeah. Vhagar. I don't think Vhagar's making it out of this conflict. Because
numbers, okay, but we just saw what he did to one dragon.
Yeah,
I'm saying 3. I'm saying, well, we know, and now what we got, 13 versus 3. I'm saying it's going to take.
I'll say like this 13 versus 7.
He's taking some mother efforts with him. When he goes
down, 13 versus 4, because Alicent has a 4th kid.
But the one dragon is worth at least 5.
But they never bring up the 4th fucking kid in this show.
Darren, yeah. He's in Old Town. He's in Old Town where the High Towers are. Yeah.
So does he have a dragon too?
Yes, he does. Yeah.
Okay.
I think they just didn't have time to go into his character and part of the story for this season, so they'll work that into next season. So
I could have sworn she had another kid, and then it never showed up. She was like pregnant one more time. I was like, what the fuck? Like, where is this thing?
In that Ringerverse podcast, they joke about how like he just hasn't showed up yet. So So any last words from anybody before we close out?
I as a very vocal and rambunctious and most of the time silly and stupid kid amongst what feels like I'm talking to adults every week, I just want to say thank you so much for not only having us on, but giving us a platform to discuss something that we all really love and appreciate. And if you are listening to this, thank you so much for one, making it this far, but two, caring enough about this show to listen to a bunch of different people in different places around the country go and discuss something that brings us all together, which is this amazing television show. So I'm going to reflect on this year, and Game of Thrones is one of the highlights, but an even bigger highlight was after every single week getting to discuss it with whoever the cast was that week. And I'm going to miss this.
Yeah, thanks everybody for tuning in and, you know, joining a bunch of nerds who love dragons and incest.
Hey,
quote me on that. Everybody here.
Vegas. I'm going to drop that into Twitch chat sometime.
I do want to take this moment that I called Daemon a fucking mile away. I called that shit like as soon as they like proposed the Aegon as the anyway. I digest. Thank you for listening to my dumb rants.
Yeah, appreciate y'all for having me on. It's fun. It's again just like Nick was saying. It's so much fun to chat about it. Like that's half the fun. Half the fun is watching the show. Half the fun is just talking about it with people throughout the week and for the next episode.
Everybody else's takes.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah. I wanted to thank everybody watching this and listening, and everybody who's been along the journey. I wanted to thank all of you guys here for doing this when I brought up this idea, because we've done podcasts before, but it's usually the day after or what have you. But I was like we said with Thrones, I was like, we got to watch it like immediately, and we got to talk about it immediately. So thank you guys for going on this journey with me and staying up super late every Sunday night to do this. And then obviously I want to thank Chance as well on a side piece for editing all of these episodes, taking time out of his day after we record these episodes to edit them and make them look awesome with the awesome thumbnails and SEO and all that good stuff. So I wanted to thank you for that.
Yeah, it's my pleasure.
And so that is it, everybody. We will see you at some point in the future, 2024 at some point. But we really appreciate you coming along for the ride for this entire season of House of the Dragon. But it is over. So this podcast. Bye.
Take it easy.